Bill 546.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator John Lapp, the 24th District. I'm here today to introduce Senate Bill 546. Some of you may remember this bill from relatively late session last year. This bill was filed right on the last day of session of filing last year. And what 546 creates the opportunity for us as a legislature to significantly push back on what is been commonly known as Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. It's no secret that this is a law that passed in January 2010, and from that point on, I want to remind you, it was a completely partisan vote that took place. From that point on, both our national party as well as the Republican Party and members of the Senate and the General Assembly have tried to do what they could with respect to pushing back on a law that we believe to be a disastrous law, a law that will not do what it pretends to do. So some of the things that we pursued in the General Assembly, first, back in 2010, we put forth Proposition C. We took that to the voters, and we had 71% of Missourians suggest that they supported Prop C, and that was the vehicle by which they could push back on Obamacare. In 2 years ago, I carried Senate Bill 749. The bill we overrode the governor's veto in special session, and where we were trying to put an open Missouri law to protect the legislative rights of citizens. That was a bill where it was in contradiction of federal law, so it was not a surprise that shortly thereafter the courts ruled that it was just that. And that law sits and waits as things like the Hobby Lobby legislation as well as the Sisters of Mercy legislation moves through the courts. And hopefully we'll be successful and prevail. We've had Proposition E last election cycle, where Missourians voted to have nothing to do with the state-run exchanges. And then members of this General Assembly, 2-4, have not taken up the expansion of Medicare. We've done everything we can, we have done everything in our legislative power to express our dissatisfaction with the Affordable Care Act, and we've pushed back any way we possibly can. And what Senate Bill 546 is, it's a legal avenue by which we can continue to push back and to separate the imposition of this law on Missourians from the imposition of this law to members of other states. So let me explain what's in front of you and what the ideas intend to do. So what was made very clear in the Affordable Care Act is that the states themselves would continue to have power over the insurance industry in their state. They would license the insurance industry. It was so important to the writers of the Affordable Care Act that it was made very clear in the act that they were not superseding that power the states had. So we continue to have that right to oversee our insurance industry. And what this bill says is that in order for our insurance providers to remain providers in our state, that we ask them to adhere to federal law. Logical, that they would follow the law. But if they were to break or violate federal law, that would be a criteria by which we would remove their license. Inside of the Affordable Care Act is a very clear provision that, in fact, is also moving through the courts now, wherein it states that the subsidies, that with respect to the healthcare exchanges, that federal subsidies would only be allowed to flow through state-run exchanges. It's very clear. And the logic behind that makes sense in that the federal government was trying to coerce the states into having the exchanges. They did not intend to be managing the number of exchanges in which they're managing. So it is spelled out explicitly that only through state-run exchanges would federal subsidies be allowed to flow. Now, we've had an IRS ruling that has come out and said, well, that's what the law says, but that's not the intent of the law. And they've allowed the subsidies to flow through the federal exchanges as well as the state-run exchanges. So first, what we say here is that if you're an insurance company and you accept a subsidy through a federal run exchange, you violate the law. And then what's important there is that to the extent that we regulate the insurance industry, it's important that when we make a determination as to whether or not they can practice in Missouri, that we have a legal basis for it. In this instance, they will have violated the federal law. That's the basis for this. That's why this bill, if it were to pass, would stand up in court, because it's not superseding federal law. It's actually, ironically enough, it's asking the insurance industry to adhere to the law. Now, who does this help in Missouri other than those of us who may not be big fans of the Affordable Care Act? Well, the trigger provision for the employer penalty is the actual subsidy itself. So the administration, as it's been apt to do here the week, for the last year or so, they've changed parts of the Affordable Care Act. And as we know, they pushed back the employer penalty for calendar year 2014, but right now, the way the law is being interpreted by the administration, beginning 2015, there'll be a federal penalty. But the triggering mechanism for the penalty is the existence of subsidies. So if subsidies are not allowed to flow through the exchange, then legally, our employers can't be penalized in 2015. Now, there are many who would say to me, or to any of you who might support this bill, that you guys, when we just get over it, it's the law of the land, and move on, and stop trying to push back, and stop trying to fight. And my response to that criticism, and a thought for all of you, is, this is my 4th year, and there have been laws we've passed, substantial laws that we've passed, that we've gone back the very next year, if not shortly thereafter, to fix, to amend. There was unintended consequences in the original legislation. So the basis by which Senate Bill 546 would, I think, withstand a legal test are things that are in the law, and what the administration insists upon not doing is changing one line of that law through legislative act. And so to those who would say, well, this is ridiculous and we shouldn't consider it, Missouri should get over it, the simple solution, if we were to pass this law, to reconciling this law to those who support the Affordable Care Act, is to get the administration to interface with the legislature at the federal level and begin the process of fixing an extremely flawed piece of legislation. With that, I'll take whatever questions that may be in the committee.
Very good. Thank you for your presentation. Is there any questions of Senator Lane?
It's good I got you guys at the end of the long hearing.
Why do you think I put you there? Very good. Is there anyone here that would like to testify in, let's be fair here, how many people, by a show of hands, would like to testify in support? Okay, how many people here would like to testify in opposition? All right, very good. I'm going to we'll be out of here in 20 minutes. So how about we go about 3 minutes for supporting? That would be 18. So that'd be good. Everybody gets 3 minutes. So come on up. The first person. Do you have a list, or do you want me to say it? First person would like to testify in support. Come on up.